Hey everybody, today we are going to be jumping back into another 2010 deck. And I love covering meta decks because I think they're very important to understanding different formats and how decks will interact with the format. But at the same time too, I also really enjoy talking about different rogue decks I'm working on, different strategies I'm working on. I feel like for me as a player, it gives me more chance to be creative and show that creativity. So today we are going to be talking about another Gliscor variant. I've been trying to do a lot of work with Gliscor in 2010 because I feel like it's got so much potential, but it just is lacking a little bit to get to that tier 1 status. And before we jump into the video today, I got to tell you about a friend of mine, and his name is Ryan Borgman. And unfortunately, Ryan isn't with us anymore. But Ryan was a big guy. However, he had a bigger personality, and he loved his friends and he loved Pokemon. One of the happiest times I've ever seen Ryan was at the 2009 Nationals, where he was playing a Flygon-Gliscor-Slowking deck. And the strategy behind the deck is essentially Slowking lets you look at the top 3 cards of your deck. Flygon discards the top card of your opponent's deck in between turns. So essentially, Ryan would look at the top 3 cards of his opponent's deck and then sandwich them. So the first card the card he put on top, he knew was going to get discarded. The middle card is what his opponent was going to draw, and then the bottom card was going to get discarded. So as long as out of the top 3 cards of the opponent's deck, as long as there was one of them that Ryan didn't care that they had, he could basically create a lock. And I borrowed really heavily from that strategy when I was designing this Gliscor deck. Now, I'll be upfront with you and say that this Gliscor deck suffers from many of the same problems the other Gliscor deck with the 2010 format. But just watching Ryan play that deck and just the sheer amount of excitement that combo gave him, mostly to the dismay of his opponents, I knew I wanted to try the strategy for myself and hopefully have some of that same fun. Now, in 2009, Ryan went 6-3 with the deck, narrowly missing top cut at Nationals that year. This is, like I said, for the 2010 format, not the 2009 format. But essentially, it's this Gliscor deck, but it gives us a ton of different... There's like 2 or 3 different locks within the deck. So even if you can't pull one of them off, maybe you can pull a different one off. If you're able to pull multiple locks off in the same game, it's just a lot of really cool things you can do with the deck. So a couple of different things here. First off, you of course have the standard Gliscor Spirit Tomb lock. Basically, you have Spirit Tomb with either a Dark Energy on Flygon or an Unknown Q under the Spirit Tomb. Retreat the Spirit Tomb to Gliscor. Level up to Gliscor level X. Poison and paralyze and poison the opponent's active Pokemon with shooting poison. And then use Burning Poison to return Gliscor to your hand and put Spirit Tomb back up so they can't play item cards. The other combo you can do is you can do the exact same strategy, but instead of sending Spirit Tomb up, you send Flygon level X up to basically just try to mill them out. This works well against decks that don't play Warp Point or don't play Warp Energy, stuff that they can't get out of the lock. We also play 2 Memory Berry in the deck, so the Flygon level X and then Trap and Sand Tomb combo also works, along with the Flygon level X and Inviting Trap. Drag up stuff your opponent's not going to be able to get out of the active spot, like Claydol, Dusknoir, stuff like that. So that's another lock you can do with the deck. Then Slowking on their own can be a lock, just because you're constantly looking at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. You can also look at the top 3 cards of your deck if you're in a rough spot, but typically you're going to want to look at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck, and then you just basically make sure that they don't draw anything. And if they don't have a supporter in their hand or something like that, then you can basically just lock them out of the game. Now, a lot of decks in the format do play Claydol, so that's going to be something we're going to want to go after with a combination of Shooting Poison and then Wind Erosion. We can make sure they're not being able to use Cosmic Power, and ideally we can try to get that Claydol knockout coming into our turn, so then we get a fresh turn to try to drag something else up or try to lock a different Pokemon. But other than that, let's go ahead and just jump into the deck here. So we play... So I'm going to not go into as much detail about the Gliscor lock as I did in the other video. If you're new to the Gliscor strategy, I really suggest that you watch my first video on Gliscor Level X. I go really in depth and in detail into the deck and some of the strengths of the deck and then some of the challenges the deck's going to face in the 2010 format. This one I'm not going to go into as much detail on, just not to be repetitive. So we play a 3-3 Gliscor Level X line, 3-3-1 Gliscor Level X line. This is pretty standard. You can go 2-2, but you get yourself in a lot of trouble if you prize one of the Gliscors. 3 copies of Spiritomb. We cut the 4th one for space. That was something I struggled with quite a lot in this deck, was just finding room. 2 Baltoy, 2 Claydol. Claydol is just absolutely essential in the 2010 format. Cosmic Power is just so strong, there's no way you can get around not playing it outside of a few select decks. Then, since we're only playing a thin 2-2-2-1 Flygon line, I opted not to play Rare Candy in the deck. We're just going to rely on Spiritomb and then the good old-fashioned evolution of getting those out. You know, everybody remembers when evolution was common in Pokemon, right? So we just go with 2 Trap Bench. Obviously, we want Inviting Trap, Sand Tomb. Just a lot of strength there. It gives us a lot of different options. Just don't be afraid to, like, even if you don't have, like, these massive combos, if you can just sit there and Sand Tomb a Spiritomb, or Sand Tomb a, just a Misprit and a Zelf, something that they might struggle to get out of the active spot a little bit. Even if they do play Warp Energy or Warp Point, it does not necessarily mean they have it in those situations. So those can be very strong options within their own. I've also had games before where I can, like if my opponent has Nidoqueen in play and they don't play Warp Energy, you can just Sand Tomb a Spiritomb for the rest of the game, and eventually you're going to win because eventually you're going to get the Flygon Level X out. Ideally, if you have a Memory Berry in play already. So just some options, a lot of options with the Trap Bench. Vibrava. As far as the stage 1 goes, Vibrava is actually really good because it does give you a late game option for Energy Typhoon. This is pretty counterproductive to the strategy of the deck. As far as wanting to mill your opponent, you don't want to put a bunch of cards back into their deck, but at the same time too, if you are in a situation where you need to take a big knockout, Energy Typhoon gives you the deck a way to do massive damage. 2 Flygon, so basically all around good. Rainbow Float, we play the Fighting Energy, we play the Dark Energy, so it's going to give our Claydol, our Gliscors, our Spiritombs all free retreat if we've got those on. Sandwall, 40 damage is incredibly good, discarding the Stadium, can't take damage next turn. Obviously, against decks like Gyarados, it's very good. Against decks like Gardevoir, that can be very good, discarding that Moonlight Stadium. And then Power Swing and a pinch if we need damage, but once again, that's not really the strategy we're going with here. Flygon Level X, probably my top 10 favorite Pokemon cards of all time. Wind Erosion is going to be the main idea, where we are going to be trying to discard the top card of our opponent's deck, start milling those resources, start taking, just basically trying to deny them options. And then Extreme Attack is always good and situationally good to knock out Level X's that are in play. One is Zelf, play too many key cards of one of we can't prize, the Gliscor or the Flygon, got to make sure we have those, have to play the Zelf. 1 Slowpoke. Slowpoke, once again, is not great. I don't like the 2 retreat, I don't like the double weakness to lightning, but having the Rambunctious party attack, Slowpoke likes to get a little crazy. And to get some basics in play can be incredibly strong, especially since we do play a large amount of basics in the deck. If we do unfortunately open with Slowpoke, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's not what we want, but we play so many basics that shouldn't be a very common sight to open with. Second sight, with Slowking, obviously going to be the number 1 strategy with this. Not only it can help our consistency a little bit, but usually just trying to use it to disrupt the opponent. 1 Unknown Q. Would love a second one in the deck, but had to cut it for space. And then 1 Uxie. Great to search off of Roseanne's, Pokemon Communication, BB's, Luxury Ball. Just so many different ways to search it out. It gives us a really strong draw option for the deck. So we are going to play 4 Roseannes, 3 Cynthia's Feelings. Once again, this is a slower lock deck, so our opponents are going to take knockouts against us. But the advantage of playing a lock deck is we don't really care. You can take 5 prizes against this deck as long as I make sure you don't take 6. I'm fine. Cynthia's Feelings is going to give us ways to draw massive amounts of cards and just keep trying to build our setup as our opponent is putting that pressure on us. 2 BB Search. Once again, I would go with a higher communication count and a lower BB's count. I want to be able to make strong plays after I play a big supporter like a Cynthia's Feelings, or to be able to use Pokemon Communication to lower my hand size for Claydol before I start, so I can get larger cosmic draws off and stuff like that. 2 Judge. Judge works incredibly well in this deck because if we're trying to lock our opponent, putting them in that 4-card hand and saying, hey, you better draw something off those 4 cards, otherwise you're probably not going to draw anything good the rest of the game, can be really strong. It's also one of the few, it's probably also your best chance at beating an SP deck if you are able to get that Slowking lock off and you judge them and they don't have the Power Spray in their hand or a Cyrus to get the Power Spray. I know that can be asking for a lot, but if they don't have either one of those at that point in the game, you can ensure that they don't ever draw either one of those ever again. So there's a lot of advantages with Judge. If you can catch a little bit of luck, the SP matchup for this deck I think is better than probably other variants of Gliscor just because it's easier to, you have more options to deal with Power Spray. 4 Pokemon Communication. Like I said, we play so many Pokemon in the deck. I believe it's 25 Pokemon. It's always going to be a live card. It's going to lower our hand size, make sure we get better Uxies off, better Communications off, or better Claydols off. And on top of that, it doesn't take our supporter for the turn, so we can still Cynthia's Feelings, and then be able to make some plays after that. 3 Pokemon Reversal. I had 4 in the deck. Unfortunately, I did have to cut the 4th one. Essentially, this is going to be your best chance against Gardevoir. You're going to want to be able to drag something up like a Claydol or a Spiritomb, and then start using Memory Berry or Trapinch to just lock it in place. Typically, most Gardevoir decks do not play Warp Point or Warp Energy, so if you can lock something active, then your opponent can have a hard time getting out of that, especially if they fill their bench so they can't Unknown G. Even if they do Unknown G, you can still use the Gliscor and lock it on the following turn to get it out of the sand. You can lock it on the following turn with Gliscor, and then as long as you can lock it active for 1 turn and they don't have that turn to Psychic Block, it'll turn Gliscor Shooting Poison back on. 1 Luxury Ball. No reason not to play Luxury Ball in this deck. It grabs everything except for the Gliscor and Flygon. It's incredibly strong. 1 Night Maintenance. I go between 1 and 2 in decks like this, but I think if you play carefully, 1 is fine. 1 Premier Ball, once again, to grab our Gliscor, grab our Flygon. You can use it either very aggressively to search it out, or reactively to grab it out of the discard pile if it unfortunately did get knocked out. 2 Memory Berries. We play 2 Flygon, 2/2/2 Flygon lines, so 2 Memory Berries combos with that. Once again, it is thin. You are going to have to use some caution when playing with it, but as long as you do the 2 lines, just 2 copies should play fine. 3 Broken Time Space. Once again, a little thin, but it should play fine with the deck. You just got to play carefully with it and kind of be aware of what you're playing. Most decks in the format only place 2 stadiums. Like, you only see 2 Moonlight Stadium, 2 Stark Mountain. Other than decks that play Broken Time Space, like Gyarados, will max their Broken Time Space count. So the 3 of Broken Time Space should be fine, as long as your opponent doesn't catch you at a point where they can remove it and you don't have access to it at a time you really need it. Energy lineup is going to be 4 Call Energy. A lot of our energy requirements are going to be colorless for the Flygon, so it combos well, plus it gives us a good setup card. 1 Warp Energy, just to make sure our opponent doesn't do any sort of pesky chat-tot locks or anything like that. Gives us an out there. 2 Fighting Energy, combos with our 2/2/2 Flygon and our Memory Berry. We also play Night Maintenance if we need to on that. And then 1 Dark Energy to combo with Flygon and Spiritomb. It can get a little bit annoying if we do prize a single Dark Energy, but the Spiritomb Gliscor lock is not the main strategy of the deck. So it does give us a little bit of extra freedom with that. But this is another look at another way to play Gliscor, like I said, I'm working on 5 or 6 different Gliscor variants. They all have their own pros and cons, and I'm going to say this one has some strengths, it has some weaknesses, but it is really fun to play. So if you get a chance, definitely try it out in the 2010 format. I apologize, but you will probably not make very many friends playing this deck. So if that's important to you, maybe Gliscor isn't the best, but if you want to have fun, definitely play this deck, play Gliscor. Once again, shout out to Jay Gearhart for the PokeGear app. It's been awesome, and it's been so much easier to do these deck profiles. So shout out to him. If you get a chance, do support him, support the program. If you ever have any interest in buying the cards too, I think you can click on the links and it'll take you to TCG Player. I think he gets some affiliate kickback on that. So other than that, I hope to see you in the next video.